Show with Jacquie Wayans. Inspiration through word and song for you.
Hi, I'm Jacquie Wayans. I'm the host of Don't Give Up and Win, and we've got a wonderful show for you today. We have been talking about forgiveness, and in this season where people are singing about joy and happiness and love, it's really hard to do that if you're walking around with unforgiveness in your heart, if you're walking around with bitterness. And so today we have a wonderful guest with us, Mr. Ken Jenkins, who is actually a Bronx native, and he is also the executive producer and screenwriter, and he's an author of A Heart That Forgives. Welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Thank you, Jacquie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a privilege. It's a privilege. You know, people say that you can't make real connections on social media, and I'm saying that's not true at all. You know, there's a wonderful opportunity that we have to really network. And when I saw the movie, I actually had seen it on PureFlix. And then when I connected with you, I thought, my goodness, this is wonderful. So for those who don't know, we're going to get into it a little later on, but A Heart That Forgives is now on DVD, and it's a wonderfully challenging movie about what it takes to forgive, not for some simple, little trivial offense, but we're talking about abuse, we're talking about wrong decision making, a lot of hard-hitting, very dramatic issues are tackled in that movie. So I thank you for doing it. But first I want to talk to you about you. So why don't you take a moment and tell our audience about your childhood. What was it like growing up here in the Bronx for you? You know, what was your family life like? What were your passions?
Well, growing up in the South Bronx was tough. If anyone knows the Bronx, Fort Apache, it was a tough neighborhood growing up. I was one of the few interracial families in the Bronx. So there were a lot of challenges culturally growing up. As you can imagine, white mother and a black father.
Right.
So from a very young age, expressing myself through writing was something that just came naturally. And I just began to write poetry, short stories. I actually wrote a book when I was about 10 that I think my grandmother took from me and never gave it back. So I have no idea what it is.
Oh my goodness. Well, it was either brilliant or a little embarrassing. I'm not sure which. A little bit of both. So tell me about your family. Did you grow up in a Christian household? Was faith mentioned, talked about when you were growing up? What was your house like?
No, faith wasn't mentioned at all. My mother, her family background is Jewish.
Okay.
My dad was from Amelia County, Virginia. He was from the school of hard knocks, so to speak. So church was not something that was even in his vocabulary. He was always telling us not to get brainwashed by those people, so to speak. So there really wasn't an element of faith in my life growing up. But that's how much I realized God loved me when I did come to know him as an adult, because even when I didn't know him as a child, he knew me.
Well, talk to me about that process a little bit, because, you know, you are here, you're a young kid, you have this passion for writing. What were some of the hopes and dreams that you had for your future, and what were some of the challenges that stood in your way for getting there?
Well, as a kid, my hope was to grow up and play professional football, like I think mostly every child has at that age. I played football in high school. I played football in college. My biggest challenge was being too slow, I guess. From a writing perspective, I never really had aspirations of, let's say, being an author or being a screenwriter, because my writing was for me. It was a way for me to channel my emotions. It was a way for me to work through the things that I was going through as a child, as an interracial child growing up in the early 70s, in the mid 70s. You know, one of the largest obstacles for me was just identifying who I was. Who did I identify? You know, something as simple as filling out an application. And back in the day, they used to have a little box that said black, white, or other.
Right.
And
Right.
so I used to sit there and literally, you know, check other. Um, Now you have so many different variables politically when you go to an application for something like that. So I really didn't have aspirations when it came to writing. It was just something that I did for me.
It's amazing how the Lord will use the things that we are doing and just for ourselves, we think, and we don't even really have a good sense or an idea of who He is at the time. As you mentioned, you didn't. And it wasn't until you were an adult that you started to explore this relationship for yourself. Just tell us in a minute or two, how did you come to make the decision for the Lord for yourself?
Oh, I think I was probably at a point in my life where I was completely, how would I say it, lost.
Hmm.
Um, I was pursuing a lot of things physically, financially, um, in hopes of satisfying something within me that I knew was there, but just couldn't identify it. And once I achieved those things, I still was unfulfilled. And then one day I remember just going to a service at a Garden of Prayer in the Bronx, New York, on 3rd Avenue and Washington Boulevard in the Bronx. And I remember just being there and listening to the service and felt I had just wasted some time and got up to walk out. And the pastor said, "Don't leave. The best is yet to come." Called me back up. And the next thing I knew, I was waking up or I was coming to consciousness.
Mm.
Uh, must have been 15, 20 minutes later. And at that point, I knew that God was real and God loved me and God was going to do some things in my life, even though I didn't know what they were at the time. I just knew that God's presence had showed up in my life.
That is a wonderful, wonderful story. I love that piece of history there. The best is yet to come. That is a
Yeah.
sentence that has meaning on multiple levels. It has meaning for that moment in time, but it also has meaning as we're going to continue and pick up your story. You know, we're going to come back and we're going to find out more about Ken Jenkins' life. There's more to this wonderful man and what God has been able to do through him, and even through him in times of crisis, in times of hurt, in times of sorrow. He wrote a screenplay not because he just wanted to fiddle his fingers or do something in the entertainment business. No, there's a message here that he was trying to get across, a message of hope, a message of love and forgiveness. When we come back, we'll hear more.
Operator 901, where's the emergency?
127 Brymere.
Okay, what's going on there?
I'd like to order a pizza for delivery.
Ma'am, you've reached 911. This is an emergency line.
Large with half pepperoni, half mushroom.
You know you've called 911. This is an emergency
Do you
line.
know how long it'll be?
Okay, ma'am, is everything okay over there? Do you have an emergency or not?
Yes.
And you're unable to talk because...
Right.
Is there someone in the room with you? Just say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, it looks like I have an officer about a mile from your location. Are there any weapons in your house?
No.
Can you stay on the phone with me?
No. See you soon. Thank you.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
Hi, I'm Jacquie Wayans, and welcome back to Don't Give Up and Win. We have got a story for you today, one that will really touch your heart and hopefully meet you and reach you where you are. We are speaking with Mr. Ken Jenkins, who's also the screenwriter for A Heart That Forgives, a wonderful movie that's now available on DVD, and we're going to give you guys an opportunity to win a copy. But I want to speak more, Ken, about your life just a little bit before creating the movie, and that is, you know, we all have hopes and dreams for our future. And here you are, you walk out of that church. He said the best was yet to come. And you did experience some better days. You know, you fell in love, you got married, you were living a life with someone. But then you lost your wife. Talk to us a little bit about that experience.
That was an on-the-job experience. I mean, I had no inclination. I was thrust into single parenthood suddenly. I remember it like it was yesterday. I went to bed on a Monday night. It was August 9th, 2010. I woke up Tuesday morning as a single dad, not knowing what I was going to do with my life now. I had two daughters. They were 15 and 11 at the time, still in high school, still a lot of things to be done. And it was tough. You know, went through that whole first year of dealing with the guilt of, had I done enough as a husband? You know, did I say I love you enough? Had I been there with her? Could I have helped her? Could I have saved her?
You know,
spent a lot of time.
You're touching on two issues, and I kind of want to separate them out a little bit and slow the process down. This idea of waking up one morning and you are a single parent, I mean, that's shocking. And not only a single parent, but all the things that you relied on your wife to do, all, you know, the dress buying, I mean, you had daughters, and so it's different. What was the support system for you? What was that like? How long did it take you to get your legs back under you?
I'd say it took me about 4 or 5 years, to be honest. I don't literally remember that whole first year. It was a daze. My support system, I had a few friends around me that are those true friends, ride or die type friends who were there. One friend in particular, a woman who was my spiritual mom, her name was Linda Brown. Literally, I would call her up some mornings and say, Linda, I'm not getting out of bed. I don't want to deal with the world, but my kids need to go to school. She would come over and help and cook breakfast and get them to school. So it was very, very important to have that support system around me.
Yeah, it takes a lot to get moving again, and it takes a lot of support that oftentimes people might think after a year you're good, you know, and after 2 years, come on, get with it, get back in the swing of things. So it's very real of you to say, no, it took about 4 or 5 years just to start to feel like me again. So thank you for sharing that. And then you touched on this idea of survivor's remorse, where you started to question yourself. Was I a good spouse? You know, why am I here and not her? Talk to us about survivor's remorse and what that looks like. And did you even know what it was called at the time?
I did not know what it was called at the time. All I knew was that I was now in this position that I never expected to be in. There was a lot of things on my shoulder, and you know, the question you ask yourself, why? Why did it happen? Why am I here? You know, did I say enough? Do enough? It's real. It is very, very real. You go through a whole process of just trying to understand, why me? Why am I the one that's left? So many things to learn, so many things that my wife did that I just took for granted. So many opportunities to say I love you that I didn't take. And you know, now I'm very adamant, making sure my kids know that I love them, making sure people that I love them, that I tell them that I love them, because I'm a living testimony of the concept of tomorrow not being promised to you.
Yeah, you cannot take it for granted. You can't take people for granted. You can't take God for granted. You know, when the season that we're in, it's a time where a lot of people are alone and a lot of people are closed off and they don't know how to say, I love you. And they want to embrace it, but they have walls built up around them. And so that brings me into A Heart That Forgives, this movie that touches on people who have walls around them. It touches on this idea of survivor's remorse, what happens when a loved one is critically ill in the hospital on their deathbed, whether they lived a good life or a poor life. In this case, your character did not live the type of life that would make people want to mourn for him, but it deals with the challenge of forgiveness. It deals with issues of abuse. What made you write this story? What was your passion to bring this story to life?
Well, I kind of resorted back to the thing that was familiar and comfortable to me when my wife died, and that was my writing. I got caught up in the busyness of making a living and providing and getting a bigger house and a better car. I really hadn't picked up a pen in a long time. But when that happened, when crisis, so to speak, was upon me, I resorted back to what was familiar, and that was writing. So I just began writing about my experience. And it was going to be what I thought was just a therapeutic journal, if you will, about my experience as a single dad now, having these two girls. Interestingly enough, I began to meet a lot of people, a lot of men during that time were thrust into single parenthood themselves. So I knew God had his hand in it. I knew that even though the situation caught me by surprise, it did not catch God by surprise. So Heart That Forgives actually started out as my therapeutic journal to myself so that I could reconcile that I had done everything that I could do, that I did not need to feel guilty, that I could in turn accept the fact that it was okay to heal, it was okay to move on, and then forgive myself.
Well, that is the perfect way to close out this segment, because when we come back, we're going to take a look at A Heart That Forgives. We're going to take a look at some of these key issues, and we're going to explore forgiveness for ourselves. We're going to take it out of the existential and bring it home right into our hearts when we return.
One time my mom got mad at my brother for lying to her. She asked me what I thought she should do. I said, you should just forgive and forget. Everyone makes mistakes. Then she said that even if we forgave everything bad that people did to us, it still does not make it right. Since then, I've been cautious about forgiving people, but I really don't know if that's right either. Sometimes I think about the times when I messed up, and all I really needed was a second chance.
Don't you give up now. Don't you give up now.
Hold up. It's like $10,000 in here. What's this? So where did it come from? I don't want to know.
You know me. You know me. I need you to trust me on this, all right?
I think I killed this old man today.
Is still your father in here? That is not my father. If they would have known what kind of man they had on that bed, they would have let him die. Oh, Sandra, I'm so sorry.
God! I hate you. I hate you!
So you don't think I'm serious about telling everyone about you and Silk, the new suits, the watches?
Proverb 13:22. Then all the wealth of the sinners will be stored up for the righteous.
And we're back with my guest, Ken Jenkins, and we're talking about a movie that is dramatic, that is heartfelt, and dealing with real life issues, A Heart That Forgives. Ken, I want you to hone right in. You know, I'm a writer myself, and the skeleton of, I believe, almost every book, every movie, every story has something that you can draw from Bible characters. And so this concept that you have of two brothers, you know, one that goes the route of being a preacher and the other that takes more of the wayward street path. And I see that kind of Cain and Abel conflict, you know, that Esau and Jacob conflict. But why don't you pack it on for us a little bit more and develop these characters for us and the real challenges that exist between these brothers?
Okay. So in the film, we have Pastor Malcolm Stevens, played by Mario Mims, and we have Silk, played by Charles Malik Whitfield. Mario follows in the footsteps of his foster dad and becomes a pastor. Silk takes the more dark path, if you will. However, there was always a calling on Silk's life, and he knew it, and he felt it, and believed that God had something in store for him. So with these two characters, we wanted to show the reality of what happens when we make poor decisions. We didn't want to create a movie that was, as my director, M. Legend Brown, says, bubbles and balloons, and we're skipping down the yellow brick road at the end. We want to paint a picture of real characters making bad decisions. Pastors are human, and they too make poor decisions sometimes. People that come up in the church, as the two brothers did. Silk made poor choices. He needed the fast money. He wanted that kind of life, but he knew that something had to change in his life. That's where the relationship between the two of them clashed, but also was a relationship of love. And throughout the story, we begin to unpack why these two are continuously coming together. Why is Silk asking his foster brother for prayer? Why is his foster brother accepting money from him? And we begin to see how they both have a desire to seek the forgiveness that they need. Malcolm needed to seek forgiveness because he knew at some point that his secret would be told, and he'd have to come with that and confess it. And Silk knew that the life he was living wasn't long. So,
you know, it's amazing what's beautiful about what you did there, because we have a tendency to make the protagonist and the villain, right? Our hero and our villain. But you took the time to explore the fact that forgiveness needs to happen on both sides, on all sides, all around. And almost every character that you have in your film really had to come face to face with dealing with their bitterness, dealing with their loss, dealing with this issue of forgiveness. When you finished this project, and as you did your distribution, what is it that you hope to bring to people as they watch this? What is it that you want the fruit to be that happens from people watching this project?
Well, I just have to tell you right quick, I was blessed to see the fruit of this project the very first night the film aired at our red carpet premiere in Plano, Texas. In the middle of the film, one of my media guests got up and literally ran out, and I stopped him and I said, "Where are you going? You know, it's not over yet. You know, we got a lot of things to do. We're going to have Q&A afterwards." He said, "I need to go talk to my brother right now. I need to go speak to my brother right now." So the thing that I'm hoping that continues to happen with this film is that people realize there is no sin too great that God will not forgive. Not saying your life is going to turn around and be a bed of roses. However, there is nothing that you can do in your life that God hasn't seen before you, while you were yet formed in the womb. And you can go to him. You can ask for that forgiveness with a repentant heart. You can seek that forgiveness because it's ultimately for us. It's not for the other person. It's not for the exterior. Forgiveness that we need is for us so that we can heal, we can move on.
I love it. There's nothing too hard for God. There's nothing too big, too small. There's no sin that you've committed that he doesn't know about, that he can't deal with. And so I want you to take some time and speak to our viewers about the process of forgiveness, because, you know, sometimes we'll have that emotional experience. We'll go to church, we'll, you know, cry and we'll pour it out, and we feel like we've dealt with it, that we actually have forgiven. And then the holidays roll around and you're in the same room, in the same space with the person and the people, and those old wounds tend to get reopened. And you feel things stirring up and bubbling, and you don't know how to deal with it because you're like, man, I thought I managed this. So talk about the process of forgiveness.
The process really starts with yourself. It starts within you. There's a line in the movie where Pastor Malcolm talks about how you've carried this unforgiveness, this bitterness on your shoulders like a weight hunched over 10, 20, 30 years. The person that you have the problem with or that has the problem with you, they've gone on, they've moved on, and they're living their life, and they're not thinking twice about you, and your face is all frowned up, and you're feeling uncomfortable, and sometimes you even become physically ill because of the weight and the stress of holding on to unforgiveness. There's a quote, very, very famous quote. It says, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and then expecting the other person to die. Think about that.
Yeah.
The forgiveness that
Does make sense. Yeah.
we need is for us. God wants us to live out his fullness in us, not our fullness for ourselves, but here it is, his fullness in us. And the way we can do that is by releasing all of those things that have kept us bogged down, that have kept us hurt, that have kept us bitter, that have kept us guilty. And think on those things, like it says in the Bible. Think on those things that are holy, those things that are righteous. Create in me, O God, a new mind. Purify me. Let me be anxious for nothing. Let God come into your life. Let him cleanse you. Release those things to him that are not yours to give anyway. He loves you. He'll take it from you. There's nothing too big that he will not forgive.
Ken, thank you so much for being our guest today. I love what you have shared. I love the idea that you have put this movie together. Again, it's available on PureFlix. It is also something that you can purchase on YouTube to watch, but you've been gracious enough to donate one DVD for us and for our viewers. Yes. So just speak to me about what this show has done for you. We will have a random winner, and we are going to also post this on social media as well. It's simply at Jacquie Wayans, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And I just want to hear your feedback. I want to hear how you manage this forgiveness journey. So thank you for being our guest today, Ken.
And can I do one thing? Here's what I want to add. Even add Kevin LeVar's CD that has the music on it to that DVD, because that is what inspired me to do this film, and it will bless you.
Thank you. That is awesome. I actually have that CD on my phone, and when I heard the title of your movie, I thought, is there a connection here? And I heard your story, which we'll share at another time. Maybe I'll share it on social media, but thank you. Okay. You know, as I say at the close of every show, go ahead and be your very own best hero, because the greatest hero of all said that you were worth it when he gave his life for you on the cross. Until next time, be blessed.